To begin with, welcome to everyone, and I hope this will be a successful lesson. Our lesson today are cells. Before we start, we will see a video and concentrate in the video because I will ask you some questions after the video.
Cells are the smallest living units of an organism. All cells have three things in common, no matter what type of cell they are. All cells have a cell membrane, which separates the inside of the cell from its environment, cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like fluid, and DNA, which is the cell's genetic material. There are two broad categories of cells. The first category is eukaryotic cells. They have organelles, which include the nucleus and other special parts. Eukaryotic cells are more advanced, complex cells, such as those found in plants and animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells. They don't have a nucleus or membrane-enclosed organelles. They do have genetic material, but it's not contained within a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always one-celled or unicellular organisms, such as bacteria. So, what are organelles? Organelle means little organ. Organelles are the specialized parts of a cell that have unique jobs to perform. Let's start with the nucleus, the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains DNA, or genetic material. DNA dictates what the cell is going to do and how it's going to do it. Chromatin is the tangled, spread-out form of DNA found inside the nuclear membrane. When a cell is ready to divide, DNA condenses into structures known as chromosomes. The nucleus also contains a nucleolus, which is a structure where ribosomes are made. After ribosomes leave the nucleus, they will have the important job of synthesizing or making proteins. Outside the nucleus, the ribosomes and the rest of the organelles float around in cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Ribosomes may wander freely within the cytoplasm or attach to the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated as ER. There are two types of ER. Rough ER has ribosomes attached to it, and smooth ER doesn't have ribosomes attached to it. The endoplasmic reticulum is a membrane-enclosed passageway for transporting materials, such as the proteins synthesized by ribosomes. Proteins and other materials emerge from the endoplasmic reticulum in small vesicles, where the Golgi apparatus, sometimes called the Golgi body, receives them. As proteins move through the Golgi body, they're customized into forms that the cell can use. The Golgi body does this by folding the proteins into usable shapes, or adding other materials onto them, such as lipids or carbohydrates. Vacuoles are sac-like structures that store different materials. Here, in this plant cell, the central vacuole stores water. Going back to the animal cell, you will see.
Okay, it's enough. Now we will start. I will ask you some questions about the video. Who can suggest a title for our lessons? Let's hear answers. Cells? Yes, it's okay. Excellent. Plant cell? Animal cells? Yeah. Acceptable answer? Yes. Other answer? Component of cells? Maybe. Yes. Now we'll start. What are cells? What are cells? You learned before. You learned before cells and organism, and what is the difference between organism and living things. If we want to define an organism, we can say living things. An organism is a living things, and the cell, the smallest unit of living things that can carry out the basic process of life. And the earth is the home of many different living things, big, small, strange, beautiful, and everything in between. We can think in the microscopic amoeba and an 18-meter long, 60-foot giant squid called have nothing in common. However, if you look closely through a microscope, we will see how similarly they are. A giant squid and an amoeba are both organisms. Now we defined an organism is a living thing and a cell. A cell is the smallest unit of living thing that can carry out of basic processes of life. And is there a difference between an organism and living things? The same, but an organism uses a scientist in a place of living things. Now I will ask you a question. Where do cells come from? Where do cells come from? Here we have a simple answer. Cells come from other cells. How can you explain how cells come from other cells? The answer: a cell divided or split into two new cells, and so did the cell before that, and so on. For example, one cell will divide into cells, and two cells will become four cells. Four cells becomes eight cells, and so on. In this lesson, we have a new vocab: organism, cell, unicellular, multicellular, chlorophyll, tissue, organ, and organ system. Now we are gonna to study page 23. In page 23, we will explain unicellular and multicellular. Unicellular or one-celled, the same, one-celled or unicellular. Organism is made of a single cell that carries out all its life processes. Uni meaning one, multi meaning many. You have to distinguish between unicellular and multicellular. Unicellular meaning one, many, or multicellular means many. Okay. Now we will repeat the definition. Unicellular means one-celled. Organism is made of a single cell that carries out all its life processes. Multicellular, many-celled. Organisms are made of more than one cell. In multicellular organism, every cell carries out its own life processes. Now we will compare and contrast between unicellular and multicellular organisms. Similar and different. Okay. They are similar because they are both made of cells. They are similar because they are both made of cells. But they are different because unicellular organisms are made of just one cell, while multicellular organisms are made of many cells that work together to take care of different functions. Here you have to distinguish between the both. Now we have other questions. Why do you think there are more unicellular organisms than multicellular organisms? Here the answer may be vary between student and other students. Here we will take a possible answer. Most unicellular organisms are much smaller than multicellular organisms and have simpler structures. They don't require as many resources or as much space. If we look to the pictures, amoeba cells and frog cell, the difference between amoeba cell and frog cells. Now we are gonna to page 24. What's inside an animal cell? Oh, we know all organisms are made of cells. For example, your own body has more than 200 different kinds of cells, and the plant animal cells have several basic structures. We call this organelles. Organelles that help them perform life processes. This means organisms have functions that help the cell to keep alive. Cell membrane. Cell membrane. The animal cells are surrounded by a flexible wrapping. Cell membrane, flexible wrapping called cell membrane. This cell membrane is a layer around the outside cell membrane of cell, trap around the cell in somewhat like the skin around our body, gives the cell its shape, and if we look to cell membrane, controls what materials move into or out of the cell. Only certain substances are able to enter and leave the cell. We have nucleus, cytoplasm, vacuole, mitochondria, cell membrane. Mitochondria store the food, provide the cell by energy by breaking down food. Vacuoles stored wastes in the cell. Nucleus, control center for the cell, cell membrane, and cytoplasm. Now we'll answer some questions. Which organelle control the cell activities? Nucleus control the cell activities. What do mitochondria do? Mitochondria do. They supply energy for the cell by breaking down food. Other questions? Where are wastes stored in cells? In vacuoles. Now let's take PowerPoint around our lessons. Chapter 1, Cells and Kingdom. Lesson 1. Lesson 1, Cells. The new vocab: organism, cell, unicellular, multicellular, chlorophyll, tissue, organ, and organ system. What are cells? We will repeat. What are cells? Cells are the smallest units of living things that can carry out the basic processes of life. And there are two cells in the pictures: frog cells, amoeba cells. What's inside an animal cell? Here, an animal cell: nucleus, vacuole, cytoplasm, cell membrane, and mitochondria. What's inside a plant cell? Mitochondria, vacuole, nucleus, cytoplasm, cell membrane, and cell wall. Here it's enough. Thank you so much.